This is We All Be News and Radio.
Ron Hurd. Get up out of bed. Let's go. Let's go. Ron Hurd. That's the word. Get out of bed. Give me a jingle. My number 051. Get out of bed. Let's go. Don't be afraid. This is Herb Smith calling you. Herb Smith. All right, I know you're famous and all that kind of stuff, but let's go. Get out of bed.
And welcome to another wonderful edutainment edition of the Artivist Presents We All Be News and Radio. And tonight we're broadcasting. I know a lot of people are, it's a lot of anxiety. There's an ominous feeling in the air. As we all know, the current execution of Troy Davis has been delayed. The U.S. Supreme Court is making their final decision on the fate of Troy Davis, as millions are literally waiting for the word of his destiny. Will he live or die? And speaking of life or death situations, we are on We All Be Radio tonight. I'm your host for the empowerment segment, R2C2H2, the Artivist. Tonight's topic, of course, is strange fruit at San Jose State. We're talking about the untimely death of a bright, promising young man named Brother Gregory Johnson, Jr., who was found dead in his frat house on San Jose State University campus. That's the Sigma Chi Frat house there. And we'll be speaking with his mom. Tonight's topic, strange fruit at San Jose State, the curious death of Brother Gregory Johnson, Jr., a promising young man who met his death at the age of 20 under mysterious circumstances. So without further ado, we're going to hit the lines. I think our guests have been patiently waiting to tell this tragic story and what can be done in this aftermath. Reverend Denise, are you there?
Yes, hello?
Oh, Sister Denise, it's awesome to have you on. Thank you for coming on tonight. I know there's a lot of things going on tonight. I know that this is something that's very close to your heart. This is Reverend Sister Denise Johnson, the proud mother of the deceased, the late, great Gregory Johnson, Jr. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
I'd just like to get started because people are really amazed. I've been meeting people online and offline who have not heard about this story. And it's, your son died back in November 2008, shortly after President Obama became president. Can you tell us a little bit background about this story, please?
On November 22nd, 2008, around 9:30 p.m., 4 Clear Lake, California police officers came to my home in Clear Lake, California, and told me that my son was dead, me and my husband. They said he died at 2:45, which was 7 hours later. This is the first time we had been contacted. They gave us a number to call, and we called the coroner's office and asked to come and identify his body. The lady that we talked to at the coroner's office, her name was Claudine, said that he had been identified. We could not come down and identify his body because his frat brothers had already identified him. I called my son, my oldest son who lives in Tracy, and asked him, because we didn't believe it. We thought they had the wrong child. And I called my oldest child who lives in Tracy and asked him to go down and identify his brother. And he got the same response, that if he came down, because his wife told him they were coming anyway, and Claudine told them that if they came down, they wouldn't be let in. His body had already been identified by his fraternity brothers. The next morning, we left. It's a 3-hour drive from here, and we had family members, about 5 carloads of family members come up from Los Angeles. And we all drove down, and we went to the house where he was living, and I asked to see where they claimed that they found him, and they took me into the basement, And his roommate Mike told me that he found him on with his knees in front of him. Then it changed where his legs were behind him. So the story changed many times as to how they found him. And they said he was hanging from an extension cord. He claimed that he cut the cord down, and he asked for some help. He screamed for help. Well, there were plenty of kids in the house. We found that out later. The house was full of kids because they had a party the night before. And they cut him down and sat him in a chair. So we went up to the bedroom, and most of his things were already packed. And his mattress, which was a brand new mattress, was sitting off to the corner, off in one corner, because he slept on a platform bed. And we began to collect his things, and we saw my daughter-in-law noticed that his phone was there. And she asked Adam, his other roommate, Adam, he had two roommates, Mike and Adam, was that his phone? And at first he said no, then he said yes, it was his phone. And later I did find out that that phone was supposed to have been turned in as evidence to the San Jose campus police department, and it never was. They kept it, and they tampered with it. They erased all the pictures out of it, and they were trying to call his voicemail at like 8:30 that night. Well, we know it wasn't him because he was dead. And it took about, to make a long story short, the San Jose District Attorney's Office, Dana Overstreet, the head of the supervisor for the homicide department, got involved shortly after his death. And so did the FBI. The FBI was notified by the Lake County NAACP. And Alex Cobazant, Special Agent Alex Cobazant, got involved in my son's case. And the first thing he asked me, first of all, Dana Overstreet promised me that she would leave nothing unturned. Nothing would be, everything would be brought up front, because she was a mother just like I was. And she would tell me everything. And as soon as she did the investigation, she was going to call a press conference and reveal everything that happened, no matter which way it went. Well, this never happened. I never heard from her again. I talked to her in February, was the last time I heard from her when the autopsy came out, February 5th, 2009. And I never talked with her again. She never did anything she said she would do. Alex Cobazant, the first thing he asked me, the special agent, was, why would they conspire against your son? Well, that's what I want to know. I talked with him for 8 months. He promised me. He told me, he said, look, if this is not a hate crime, it's not going to go any further than the Campbell office, because he was out of the Campbell office, Campbell, California office. He said, if it's not a hate crime, it's not going any further. I talked with him in August 2009, and he told me that he did the best that he could do, that the case went all the way to Washington, D.C., and I know this is a fact. It went all the way to Washington, and they dropped it in Washington, D.C., and he tried. There was nothing that he could do about it. To this date, I have no police report. They gave me pieces of a report that didn't even make sense because all the pieces were missing. Okay, they refused to give me autopsy pictures. They told me I had to go to court. The coroner told me that. Told me I had to go to court to get the autopsy pictures. I filed a complaint with the independent auditor and crime scene photographs. They told me I had to go to court to get anything. Okay? I filed a FOIA under the Freedom of Information Act. And let me back up a little bit. I filed a FOIA in April 2009. I just got an answer in July of this year, 2011, and it states that much of the report was exempt for various reasons. One of them was that it was a threat to national security, which I don't even know what they're talking about. Okay, and one of the reasons was that there could be a pending civil lawsuit. There were many reasons. I filed a complaint October 7th, 2010, with the independent auditor of the San Jose Police Department, and because they claim they weren't even there. Well, I know they were there. I know it was in a piece of the police report, the first page, that they were there with officers' names. I filed a complaint, and they did. The independent, by the time they held on to the case for 6 months or so, the independent auditor set up a meeting with me with the district attorney, the newly elected Jeff Rosen. And my husband and I went down and met with him November 4th, 2010. And he sat there and he told me, when I showed him the pictures of my son's head, because those are pictures I took. I went to the funeral home. I knew they was lying. I knew something was wrong. And I took the pictures. I took the pictures myself because I didn't have the money to pay a pathologist to come in and take pictures. Okay? I took the pictures, and I took them to him. And he told me, oh, well, your son could have been walking around for a week with a crack in the back of his head.
Okay.
And the rest of him, the part with his neck, where you can see there's so much damage to his neck, and it's not from a hanging. I don't know what they did to him, but it wasn't, he never hung from anything because he had no ligature marks. I kept telling the coroner's office over and over again, he has no ligature marks. That next day, that Monday, when we went to the coroner's office, they still wouldn't let us see his body. Petra Albright, the investigator on the case, went in the back room, and she told me, she said, let me go take a picture of him. She came back about 7 or 8 minutes later with a black and white xeroxed piece of paper of a picture of him, of my child. I could see then that he had no marks on his neck. I could see that. But I didn't say anything then because everything was just coming in, closing in on me. I was waiting for justice to work. I really didn't believe that the autopsy was still going to say suicide. I didn't believe that. I thought if your child was in school and something happens to him or her in school, justice will prevail. What's obvious will prevail. I didn't draw those pictures. I didn't draw the pictures. Pictures don't lie.
Right.
Pictures don't lie. When the mainstream media never got involved. These people have so much clout within this so-called system of justice, they can send the media away. Media never picked up any of this. Only the Bayview and the Record Bee in Clear Lake, California, in Lake County, the smaller papers picked this up. They made sure they wanted to erase my child off this earth and then hope that, because I can't say pray because I don't know who they pray to, hope that I just go away, that I would just disappear. I would just believe. After I saw my son's skull was cracked all the way through. He had brain matter in that picture. It wasn't a scar, it was a crack on the back of his head. Mm-hmm. When I was looking at it, I was I'm taking pictures. You don't see until the pictures come out. You really don't see. That's why the saying is pictures don't lie. They don't. I was just standing there in shock taking pictures of my child who was going to be a doctor and how they had destroyed him, cold-blooded murder, and then lied and said he did it to himself. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Sister Denise, my understanding is the fact that you were not allowed to identify your own child's body on the xeroxed copy. You were not.
That's right.
When was the first time y'all was able to see the body?
We saw the body 14 days. Actually, 13 days.
13 days after your son died?
Okay. He died on November 22nd. We saw his body for the first time at the funeral home up here on December 4th.
Mm-hmm.
They would not let us. They told us his frat brothers had identified him. That's what they told us.
His frat brothers. I want people to understand, like, people think that this stuff only happened down in the South. I don't want people to understand that Sigma Chi is one of the oldest and the largest fraternity in North America. It has over 300,000 members, and its power and influence stretched all the way, arguably, to the White House, probably. It's all sectors of business and education and law and order. So, people don't understand that this can easily happen anywhere, but it happened in San Jose State at the Sigma Chi Frat House. So, you got to understand what Sigma Chi is. So, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off, but it took me 13 days to see your own son's body.
It took me 13 days. The only thing I had saw was a black and white xeroxed piece of paper, a picture of a picture. That's what I saw, and they refused. They had already, when we went to the coroner's office that Monday, when we got there, Petra Albard claimed they were doing the autopsy as we spoke. Well, I hadn't signed for an autopsy, but she claimed that they were doing it. But of course, they did a switcheroo, and they said that I had identified the body. I never saw a body. I saw a piece of paper. Okay, I didn't see the body until it got to the funeral home. But still, that crack in the head is never going anywhere. He had a crack in his skull. It's still there. And his neck was broken. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like when I look at the pictures, I'm not an expert, I'm not a forensics expert by any means, but when I look at that picture, it looks like he'd been bludgeoned to death from something hit on top of his head and made him break his neck all the way to the spine. It does not look like necessarily it was a hanging by ligature. Like you said, there was no mark.
Yeah.
But it does look like that. And also, if you think about the fact that if he was already dead, why did they touch the body? Why did the frat brother, quote unquote, touch his body or moved it into a chair?
Exactly.
And like you said, 6'2", and the ceiling was about 5'10" from the pipe to the floor. Why would he go through all that trouble? It's just weird because I know you gave me some pictures and just reading some of the stuff about your son online. He seemed like he had a lot going for himself. Like, he was an upbeat guy. He was a nice-looking guy, a great dresser, well-liked by people. He was an ordained minister, so he was very much a people person. And he was very popular among people, in particular the ladies. And, it's like he had an internship with the Golden State Warriors. Like, he wanted to become a professional sports trainer, correct?
Yes, he had applied for that, an internship, yes. And he was already working at Bali as a personal trainer, making $21
for a college student. Right, for a college student. Especially out in California, that's pretty good money. So, why would he kill himself? That's the question. Because, I read what some of his friends, they call him Junior, what they have said about him. It's like he wasn't the type of person that had that type of problems, issues with life. Like, he really lived life.
The police claimed, the campus police wrote in the pieces of the report they gave me that he owed student loans. This was supposed to be the reason for him killing himself. Well, you don't owe student loans until after you get out of school, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
He didn't owe, and he only owed a little over $4,000. He had only been in school 2 years. He was going into his third year.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't owe that much money. That's what they claim. My son didn't have any history of mental illness. He wasn't on pills. They claimed that he was on aspirin. He was taking aspirin. and they claimed that he
suicidal.
Yeah, and they claimed that he was taking steroids, but they found no steroids in his system. And from what I understand, because I'm asthmatic, steroids stay in your system a long time. Okay? He didn't have anything in his system. He didn't have any reason. He had no history. He had everything going for himself. The night before, his manager at Bali said he had been at work. He got off at 10 o'clock. He closed up the building. There was nothing wrong with him. I talked to him 5 days before he died about coming to pick him up for Thanksgiving. He was making plans. Like I said in the newspaper article, he was making plans to live. He wasn't making plans to die. They tried to use the problems my husband and I had in the past and say, well, he didn't have a father and his dad had problems. They turned that situation around and made the victims, and we were the victims. My son was a victim and made us look like the criminals. Because I had more evidence, because I took those pictures, that my son was murdered, and they knew it. They knew it. So they were willing to twist and cover up and lie on a poor black child who had made it through this system. President Obama said, send your child to school and make sure they get an education. And they murdered my child down there like a dog and then made us look like criminals with lies. All they did was lie, and they still refuse to tell the truth in the land of the free and the home of the brave.
I did have some help from Lawless America, and I know you've seen them on the Facebook. Bill Windsor went and made a video in front of the Sigma Chi house and named it Sigma Chi, the murder house, the house of murder, okay? And he made the statement he believed that my son was murdered in that house after he heard my story and did the research on it. Because there are numerous articles about what happened to my son. And it's called YouTube Murder at Sigma Chi. Okay. Immediately he was cut off Facebook, that story, and he's been getting death threats, and I believe this is he does a lot of cases, but I believe this is one of the main cases because of the simple fact my son was murdered in the Silicon Valley, the richest city, the richest area in the United States. Okay, the area most visited by President Obama. Okay, that's where he was murdered. And they are behind the cover-up. They are the reason some of them rich people down there with a whole lot of money are behind the cover-up of my son's gruesome murder. And I did file, and you know what? This is not just, it's a threat, yes. Oh, yes, because we have always been the targets because of the color of our skin. But what happened to Gregory Johnson Jr.'s and the Trayvon Martins out there, you see, this is the prelude for what is to come for poor blacks, Latinos, wherever you come from.
That's right.
This is what you're going to be introduced to, because I filed under the Freedom of Information Act to get, it was over 300 pages. I have no autopsy pictures. If you go to Strange Fruit at Sigma Chi, you will see I have a website there, strangefruit@sigmachai.com. The FOIA is on there, the answer to the Freedom of Information Act. They called it a suicide. Okay, they knew it was a hate crime. That's what they investigated it as, a hate crime.
Right.
Okay. Then when the paperwork came out, when the FOIA came back to me, it was deemed they only gave me 10 pages of a 300-page report. And they deemed it a matter of national security is the reason why I can't have any of the reports, any of the autopsy pictures.
Mm-hmm.
That is a matter of national security.
Is that right? That's heavy.
It's on the website.
Right.
It's on the web, because I'm a 60-year-old woman. Who knows how long I have to go? I've got more years behind me than I do ahead, but I tend to leave a legacy of the blood. That hands are dripping with the blood of a student down there. And that will never die. That will never die. They have tried to hush it up. They threatened anybody that's tried to help me. I had a guy that was going to help me file a lawsuit, and the FBI called him and scared him off.
Huh. Oh. Interesting.
Everybody has basically backed down because the government is involved in this cover-up.
And also, Reverend Denise, also Sigma Chi is a very powerful fraternity. It's like Skulls and Bones. I mean, they got a lot of people that are members in Sigma Chi. I mean, it's a very powerful organization. Because let's not forget, this is the Bay Area, right? San Jose. Also, you have the Bohemian Grove out in the area as well. So, I mean, you're dealing with some very nefarious, sinister type people, some Illuminati, as they call it in popular culture, type of people that we're dealing with here. So what Sister Johnson is saying is not far-fetched at all. It's very much obvious. I want to get to the No, I'm just saying, like, what people say, I know in the media, they always call people conspiracy theorists. When things are happening, when people are planning and plotting your demise, guess what? It is a conspiracy. By definition. The people are planning and plotting your demise. And if you keep on, like, lollygagging and not want to see things as they are instead of where you want them to be or how you think they should be, if people stop believing sometimes, to me, people want to believe rather than know. People rather think and believe and assume rather than know. We got to start knowing because our life depends on it.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, I read some of the stuff they said online about you. I've heard from, I believe, a paper called a Metro.
Yeah.
Maybe they help out in that area. It's like basically like a character assassination ploy, and try to make y'all look bad. But I mean, it's like it was very, because the person who wrote the article, I asked to be on the show tonight. But I found out she was an alum of San Jose State, so I don't know if they sent her out after y'all to try to hush y'all up, because I know the original story that appeared in the Spartan Daily, the college newspaper. Yeah, Jessica Fromm, that's the one who wrote the Metro article. But also, I'm talking about the guy who was the editor at the student paper. He wrote one that raised reasonable doubt. I think he did give y'all fair balanced coverage in terms of what he raised, and they put that off the website.
Yep. David Zigioni. He wrote for the Spartan Daily.
Yeah, he did a very balanced report, but they removed it, right? I mean, they removed it. You can't find it on their website at all. That article.
Assassinated that child. When I tried to call him afterward to follow up, you can't find him now.
You sure can't find him. It's hard to find him.
You cannot find him. You cannot find him. They made sure that he had nothing else to say. He graduated that May. He told me he was graduating, but afterward they made sure, and like you say, this is the oldest fraternity. Some of them up there in the White House probably, who was in that fraternity. And they made sure they wanted to, when Gregory Johnson Jr. was killed, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. As long as they saved face, which they haven't. They haven't saved face. They haven't saved face. Nothing will ever be right until the truth is told.
Well, Sister Denise, I want to ask you about the cell phone. I know they erased some of his stuff off the cell phone. Were you able to check some of his phone records? No, through the phone company? Were you able to retrieve some of the people he made last phone calls to, their numbers and whatnot?
No, I wasn't. I haven't tried to. I don't even know how to go about doing that.
I mean, they normally keep all the records. When you have a cell phone, they normally keep your phone records for such a period, if not forever. But normally you could contact the phone company. I just think it's curious that, like you said, somebody would call his phone at 8:30 at night, and his phone was laying just there. And also, he also complained about people stealing his jewelry and clothes. Is that correct?
Yeah, he called. in August of that year, he had called me and told me that he had problems with people just going through his things, taking things from him. Things always were coming up missing. And one of the guys that had moved out of the fraternity house, he was talking about moving out, you know. And one of the guys said that they were like rats. You know, they would just go through your things. And, you know, but I never thought it would come to something like this, you know. Then when I did look at some of his text messages, he was arguing back and forth, talking about some of the brothers in the, you know, fraternity, you know. And no, but I did not get, and I do believe I'll have to subpoena those records. A lot of this I have been doing on my own because I don't have a lawyer. In California, it's difficult if you don't have money to get somebody to represent you, and that has been the case from the very beginning. And I was told that, you know, I needn't even try to get a pathologist here because they're all dogs in the same race. They'll sell you out, you know.
Right.
And I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised because immediately they got rid of the police chief, Andre Barnes. They claim he retired and he's working over at San Francisco City College. You know, they got rid of the president of the university. He's working in Idaho, the ACT. He had been working there 2 years. They claim he retired. You know, people just started coming up missing. So, you know, I had some people that I knew that worked with the Oscar Grant case, and they went to the university, and the teachers had been told, don't say anything. You know, don't say anything about what happened to Gregory Johnson, Jr. Now, what kind of learning institution is that? Higher learning.
Right.
Where the teachers are encouraged to conceal a lie.
I mean, it's what it is. It's not about education. It's about indoctrination into that system. It's about conforming to their status quo. I want to ask you this, too, because I know you raised your son. He's like a very exceptional and brilliant, and he had a lot of integrity, your son, Gregory Johnson, Jr.
Yes, he did.
I often wondered, did he feel like, I mean, looking at the pictures, he was always, if not most of the time, he was the only black person in a lot of the photographs he took. Even though he looked like he was very happy, he was very at ease and comfortable. Did it make you uncomfortable to see that he was in such an environment where he was like actually the only black person? And did you ever think of himself of being a token for the frat? Do you feel like he was the token black? Or do you feel like they would use him as a token black?
You know, I didn't think about that until after Obama was elected president. And I called him. I called him right after that, a day or so after November 4th. And, you know, he said, no, everybody down here. I asked him, you want me to come get you, you know? Is there going to be some problems, you know, down there with a black president? And he said, no, everybody loves Obama. You know, but I didn't raise my child to see color. You know, maybe that was my fault. I didn't raise him. He didn't know color. He thought that he felt like he was just as good as anybody else, just as equal, and that's how I raised him. I raised him to believe that you could be anything that you wanted to be. If you worked hard and you studied, you could be anything that you wanted to be. So that wasn't his fault. That was my fault.
But I don't think it was your fault at all, because you had all the best intentions. You wanted him to reach his full maximum potential against all odds. You instilling him a certain confidence that I wish more parents would instill in their kids or help themselves to achieve against all odds, to be the best person you can be, and don't let nobody else define who you are. But just looking at the pictures, I never seen him around a lot of black folks. I was wondering about his relationship with some of the black folks on campus. And also, I mean, like, I looked at the women thing. You know, people always gonna bring up the woman thing. Cause I ain't seen no pictures of him with any sisters, any black women. But like, a lot of white women, some Asian women. I mean, was that an issue? Did he have any problems with interracial dating?
No, he
pushed back.
Did he? No, he didn't.
Yes, ma'am.
Because up here we're a minority. We're like 6% of the population up here in Clay County, and that's where he was raised. So no, he didn't have any issues. He was very self-confident. He was very, very smart, very brilliant all his life, all through school. He went to San Jose State with honors. The Sigma Chi claimed that they did so much for him. They didn't do anything for him but kill him. He went there. He was a genius. When he went there, he was brilliant. He went there with honors. He didn't see color. He felt like he was just as good as anybody else. And I guess him having white and Oriental girlfriends didn't help the situation. I know for a fact in the pieces of the police report, one guy, his name was Henderson, he was upset that my son I guess they were playing for the girl was born playing both of them. Her name was Brittany. Yeah, so he was upset about that, and he didn't like my son, but they didn't even go any further to question him to see, where he was at. They didn't question to find out about when I told them they weren't interested in anything that I had to say. The campus police, nothing. When I called and asked the city police, I called and talked to Sergeant Morales and asked him to go in and investigate, because campus police don't investigate homicides, a murder. They don't even investigate suicide. They don't investigate suicide. And I asked him why weren't they, and he laughed at me. He said, "You want us to go in?" Well, yes, I did. I thought that was their job. But they told me it was out of their jurisdiction.
I think that's interesting. I mean, I'm listening to all this, trying to take all this in, because a lot of us, we live in a malaise, this illusion that, all is right in the world. We know tonight what's going on right now in Georgia and other places in the world, all is not right. I'm talking to you on the phone about something that happened just, not that long ago after Obama got elected as president of the United States, and we see that we got a long way to go in terms of race relations. I'm just surprised that, I feel like if they had found his body anywhere but where they found it at, it would have been viewed as a homicide. I mean, this is what happened that his body was found in a frat house, of a very powerful organization with connections and on a college campus, no less. So, I mean, it's unfortunate, but I'm also interested. To me, it's like they never established a time of death. I know they said what they said, but somebody told me that, when you try to establish time of death, you should check the liver. I don't think they, in the autopsy, they didn't really check the liver at all.
No, they didn't.
True?
No, they didn't check his liver, and they didn't check his spine.
Okay.
In fact,
they did. His neck was broke.
They did know. Well, they claimed that there was no damage done to his neck in the autopsy.
Okay.
It's in there. They said no damage was done to his neck. It was nothing abnormal. So how did he die?
Look at me in the eyes. I mean, I'm looking at the pictures, and also you said something that was very telling. You said when the body came to the funeral home, I believe that his neck was on a block, and when you moved the block, his neck was limp. And normally they say, well, rigor mortis is supposed to say that at the time.
Nothing moved.
Especially 13 days after seeing him. I mean, it was 13 days later, and his neck was still limp.
His neck, when I removed the block, because my husband and I dressed him with the attendant there. And when I removed the block, his head fell backwards, and I laid it on the table. That's how I got that picture. Yeah. But see, the way his neck is damaged, you couldn't see it until you really saw the picture. You understand what I'm saying? I was going through the motions. I was trying to get my child buried, okay? because I feel like if we had to stay there a day longer, they would have cremated him down there. They had done everything else, you know, and they knew we didn't have, they knew we were poor, we didn't have no money, you know. So I was trying to bury my child, and I laid his head on the table. I didn't know all this stuff I found out afterwards, and after I had the pictures developed and saw that his neck wasn't even connected. His neck was not connected. His hair was not connected to his spine. You can see that in the picture.
Now, isn't it like an accordion or something like that? Like it was just like crushed like a can, like an aluminum can. Like it was just weird look. I mean, it is like, I keep on thinking to myself, the more I look at those pictures, the more I think that he was not hanged at all, that somebody hit him on top of the head with a very blunt instrument or some type of cause blunt force trauma. Because ain't no way in hell he could walk around a week or something like that with the back of his head split open like that. Well, you
know what? I talked with Claudine once again. She worked in the evenings. And I talked to several of them there, but I talked with her, and once again, about the fact that he didn't have a transverse incision across from his ear to ear that would indicate he had a brain. He didn't have a brain autopsy. All he had was that crack in the back of his skull. There was no, you would have seen it. His hair would have been shaved. He had nothing. He had no brain autopsy. Okay, and I asked her about that. And she said, well, maybe they did it in the back of his head, and they cut his head open, and then they just pulled his head off. It was kind of like, it was some kind of a joke to her. It was funny to her, you know. Very strange people in Santa Clara County Coroner's Office, very weird kind of, and but actually it looks like somebody, to me, it looked like somebody was pulling on his head. And they actually did pull his head off. That's what it looks like to me. You know, the crack, that does look like someone hit him with an object, a bat or something in the back of his head, or you know. But the neck is very, very strange, very strange.
It is almost like somebody could have. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And the coroner said in the Metro that there were, when I wrote Barbara Boxer, and she, instead of contacting me, she contacted the coroner's office, and they sent a letter to me saying that there were ligature marks at the time of autopsy. So, and they told Jessica Fromm, his name was Nazarino, the doctor, he told the coroner, he told Jessica Fromm that the ligature marks blanched. Well, blanched means they turn white. Since when do black people turn white when they die?
Exactly.
Any wound gets darker. So they just gave absurd answers. Because they didn't care, because they knew nobody was going to do anything about it. And they sit there right today behind a desk giving out skeletons in the coroner's office. There's a write-up about them. They'll make up anything, and they will take payoffs and anything else. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. I don't believe I could get a fair pathologist here in California.
Yeah, I'm just very disappointed. I just think that when are we as a people, in particular black folks, gonna wake up and say, they can't give you mercy. Only God can really grant you mercy, and only God can really give you justice. This system is not designed for our humanity. They don't recognize us as human beings. They always say we were 3/5 of a human being, and that's the issue. And the more I think about it, when I'm talking to you, Sister Denise, I'm an artist. I'm a creative person. I'm thinking, hey, hell, the way his neck would look, like somebody could have actually rammed his head against that pipe.
Exactly.
And did they check the pipe for any blood or DNA? I'm just thinking, because his neck like an accordion. It don't look like it is. It looks broken. It's like from a cartoon or something like that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, only 6 or 5 people came to his funeral in a house of 33 people.
That's right. And when out
and nobody
here,
offered you any condolences. Like the leadership didn't offer you any type of condolences or send you any letter or anything like that. The leadership of the fraternity.
No, they never sent me a letter. They took up a collection for his headstone. They did do that.
Okay.
They took up a collection for his headstone, and they gave him a memorial service the Wednesday after he died on the campus, and we were there. There were about 700 people there. Okay, who I guess were other fraternities, but out here nobody came. It was 4 or 5 of them came out here. If it was that many. Yeah.
See, I'm interested in that because I reached out to some of the people, some of his quote unquote, frat brothers and sisters on Facebook to let them know that we were doing this show tonight, and that they could contribute any thoughts. And I just look at the fact that bad things happen when good people don't do anything about them or say anything. That's how bad people, bad things happen and get away with the crimes. But there's a thing called universal justice or karma. And I feel like, these guys won't have a good night's sleep forever, and they're going to have to deal with the fact that they extinguished the life of a very promising and beautiful young man in a lot of different ways. And I just want to offer my condolences to you all, and, I'll try to see what I can do on my end, but I just think it's very disturbing that it shows you that we don't have any type of black media or type of black consciousness, that we got organizations more concerned about collecting money off of other people's tragedies than actually getting justice and truth out there for the people.
Can I say this?
You shouldn't be out here by yourself. Yes, ma'am.
Yep. I contacted the NAACP, the nationals. I sent everything to them because they have lawyers that are supposed to help you. They never responded. Never.
Wow. That doesn't surprise me about me.
His life meant nothing to them, but it meant everything to me. And I will never sleep. Just like the people that killed my son, they will never sleep. I know that because what you sow, you're going to reap it. They will never sleep. And this will come out. I know that. I know that because people like you, people who are willing to tell the truth, some people will tell the truth and live in the light. But the fraternity, they claim they love him. Not one has come forward. And there is some kind of secret pack, from what I understand, like a pack of dogs hiding their own vomit.
I know that in that area you got the Bohemian Grove where you have presidents and all types of powerful people. I mean, secret society is our real thing. Devil worship is our real. Making pacts with the devil, with the dark side is a real phenomenon. And we can't underplay that at all. So, I mean, it's not surprising. Like I said, if they could shut down the FBI from looking into this case, because this was a hate crime. Yeah. This was a hate crime.
That's why I went to Washington. My papers all come from Washington, D.C., with correspondence in Washington, D.C., from Eric Holden's office. This was a hate crime. They know it was a hate crime. And I tell you what, the response that I did get from it had to be somebody in the fraternity. My son's grave was decimated. His headstone, it was written on, they scratched San Jose verses on the back. And I reported to the grave keepers. And they scratched a cross on his forehead. So we're dealing with some sick folks. Sick.
Yes, ma'am. So are you willing, I read somewhere you was willing to do an exhumation if you were able to get the resources and you are open to exhumation of your son's body?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Autopsy?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
I just say it's crazy to me, like, just months later, the Oscar Grant thing, but the thing that helped Oscar Grant was the video. And, like, to me, it's, like, weird. I know when the brother got ran over in Jackson, down in Mississippi, I read about the case back in June when it happened. There was no outrage until black folks saw it on CNN. I'm saying you got to see discrimination happening for you to act. We cannot critically think and comprehend written words and how to put these things together. Understand it's weird that we always a step behind. I look at all this energy that people are showing for another poor black man on death row about to lose his life to a state that does not recognize his humanity. I'm talking about this is Caesar's law we're living under right now. But I'm saying they do not recognize his humanity. And everybody, you know, they're not only the enemies, but the friends, they call themselves friends. They call themselves support. A lot of folks are going to make off with this dead carcass. It's like, how many black Jesus-like figures once we sacrifice to the altar of white supremacy? How many Gregory Johnsons? How many Troy Davises? How many Sean Bells? How many Jenna Sixes? How many Katrinas must we endure until we wake up with our third eye and start helping each other out? Because we can't get no man as an Allen. And I keep on thinking there's so many cases like yours throughout the country. Then because of the lack of a black press to cover these cases, the word would never get out. Because I was looking at tonight, all these major media outlets that target black people on advertisements and whatnot do not give a damn about a black life.
That's
not
right.
Even BET will do a full coverage to Troy Davis. Not even BET reached out to y'all for this story. You know, Brother Tavis and Tom Joyner and Steve Harvey, they are all controlled by the white power structure. You know, they're allowed to operate because of Walmart and Wells Fargo and institutes like that. So how can we really speak truth to power? Where's the legacy of Martin? Where's the legacy of Rosa? It lies with you. It lies with us. We're the true gatekeepers of conscience now.
Yeah.
And we got to act accordingly. So, I mean, I feel you. This is the time now. It's the season now for your son to be recognized, for y'all to be recognized, and y'all won't be alone. I feel a lot of great energy around you in this case, because there's a lot of things that I have worked with people on cases similar to this, but it's said that a lot of times we're our own worst enemy. We get in the way of our own salvation, of our own resolution. And I feel like, sister, that God has moved you in such a way to use you as a conduit to awaken all of us that sleep inside in all of us to act. And not to act late, but act on time this time around.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm definitely going to do my part to get this out here. And you got anything else you want to add or say, Sister Denise?
No, I'm just a mother who loved her child. He was my youngest, and I loved him. You know, his brothers and sister, They were like his aunt and uncle. They were 15 years older than him, 14 and 15 years, and our lives will never be the same. And I hear him. I understand what the Bible says when Abel's blood cried out from the grave, because my son's blood cries from the grave every day to me. Every day. I don't go a day without thinking about him and missing him and wanting to know the truth.
We definitely on your side. So we definitely thank you and your family at this time of this grief and also this time of triumph, knowing that he's no longer going to be harmed by any of these sick sociopaths out here in this world, and that he's above and beyond all this. But I just want to ask you this, too, because, I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that's misinformation, misdirection on purpose. And I know I was reading something about, they say he had lunch with his girlfriend, quote unquote, on the day of his death, but there was no food found in his stomach, like this, the aspirins. And also they say he confessed that, you know, he said that his father was stealing money and he had a drug problem. I just want you to clear that up. You don't have to, but it's the, you know, why would, I mean, did you have a chance to talk to the girlfriend to confirm that he had lunch that day?
According to the police report, I did write her on Facebook. Okay, and she never really said too much of anything. But according to the police report, their police report, the pieces that they gave me, the campus police, when the police interviewed her, Lisa Watanabe, she hadn't seen him since the last time she saw him was Thursday. He died on Saturday. So that means she didn't have lunch with him. There was no lunch. They made that up, just like they made up all that other junk in there. Yes, my husband did have a drug problem. He's clean and sober. He was clean and sober when he died. He's clean and sober now, okay? When my husband had a drug problem, we were separated. We lived 5 years in Hawaii, okay, from 1997 to 2000. 3, we lived in Hawaii. Okay, we came home for a short period in 2008 and went right back. Okay, because my oldest son is in the military. My husband did not come back until after my son graduated in 2,000 years. Total, we were separated around 10 years. I raised him. My husband told Jessica Fromm that. I raised him. Okay, that it had been a past problem, that I raised him. Obama's father wasn't around either, but he's president of the United States.
Right.
So because like I said, they tried to make us look bad. With a serious case like this, in a homicide, they tried to make us look bad because they were lying. And they're still lying. Sir, my husband, before we left for Hawaii, he gave guardianship to my oldest son. He gave up his parental rights to my oldest son. My oldest son is a warrant officer in the military. And he gave up his parental rights because he knew he wasn't right. And he left and was living in St. Louis, Missouri. He was not around us. So it's just anything to cover up a lie. It makes this country look bad. What they have done makes this country look bad. We go to other countries and we fight. I send my child to fight in other countries for morality and human rights. My human rights have been violated, not just my civil rights. I had no right. They wouldn't even let me see his body.
I still can't get my mind around that. I mean, like, who would know that a child better than a mother? I mean, that's your child. You got a special spiritual connection to that child. I mean, you birthed that child, you raised that child, you was the child's first teacher. And for them to deny you the decency of that is an insult and should be an outrage to anybody with any type of empathy and common sense and decency.
There was no decency.
Okay, this Reverend Denise, I know we got a short time, but your son was dating a white woman at the time, right? He had a white girlfriend?
He had one that him and another, a white man, a young man was interested in. He was the president of another fraternity. Yes. Yes, he was seeing this girl. Actually, she was playing them both.
So have you ever had a chance to talk to her after what happened to your son? Did she ever reach out to you?
Oh, no, none of them. None of them will return any phone calls or anything. None of them would say anything. Because from what I understand, this fraternity is like the Illuminati. If it's not the Illuminati itself, it's sworn to secrecy. He was also, the day that he was murdered, I found out there was a young woman in there. Her name is Shannon Moore. She's now an anchor woman for Channel 11 in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and she was there when my son died. She was in that room with him. She knows exactly what happened to him.
I see. Do you think she made a deal? She made a deal? I mean, I don't know. It sounded like, she got a career.
I think she already was in the in crowd. I've seen pictures of her with, she was with Sarah Palin. I've seen pictures of her with Meg Whitman when she was running for president.
Right.
I've seen pictures of her with Joe Montana. Her dad has a company that sells bait, and he has businesses all over the world. Okay, so I know they didn't have to pay her off because she already had money.
Right. So, I mean, we could just talk about this all, but I want to make sure I'm going to let Reverend Denise Johnson know that your son will not be forgotten, and we'll keep on, evoking his name, and so we'll get justice for brother Gregory Johnson. This is a sad story, but just like, he goes down with Trayvon
and the Oscar Grants and, you know, the Jordan Davises. This is a cautionary tale for black men in America. We're not free yet. Mm-hmm. And they don't respect us, and they are afraid of us more than they love us.
There won't be no, and until there's justice, there'll be no peace. And I just like to say that this won't be the last time we'll do a show about your son, and you're more than welcome. We're going to stay in touch because I'm going to do some things on my end, do what I can with my quote-unquote limited resources. But I think really if you do things in the right spirit and nature, the universe responds, and you have everything you need to equip you for your journey and for the battle. Because the battle is not yours, it's the Lord's, as they say.
Thank you.
So I'd like to thank you so much, and we will definitely be in touch. We definitely going to share the spotlight on this because, like Winston Churchill once said, he said the truth is sometimes protected by a bodyguard of lies. So we're going to get beyond the lies, and we'll get to the truth. Thank you.
Thank you.
We love you, man.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. God bless you.
No problem. God bless you. Bye-bye.